Hey guys, Will from EDM Tips. So today I want to talk to you about the 5 biggest mistakes I see new producers making and seasoned producers that ruin their chances of getting signed. Now before we go any further, I would say that we are all guilty of these 5 mistakes at one time or another. The key and the trick is to be aware of when we're making these mistakes so then we can choose not to make them. So without further ado, let's hop into these 5 reasons why you might not be getting signed to your favorite label now or ever. Okay, so number 1, and this kind of ties into number 3, but you'll understand that in a few minutes. So number 1 is not focusing on one genre. If you think about your biggest and your favorite artists, they are almost certainly known for just producing one genre and producing it very well. Now in certain situations, an artist might transition from one genre to another, but not until they've created a body of work in that initial genre, and then after a year or two they can move on and try something a bit different. Examples of this would be deadmau5, who first shot to fame with his deep progressive house vibes, but then decided a couple of years later he wanted to try out dubstep. Now obviously he already had the audience at that point, so he could just try something new and see how it landed. If you are starting out and you've been producing for maybe 6 months to a year, you've had to play with some different genres, and I'd say that's about the time you should start focusing on one genre and deciding to become really, really good at that. If you think about it this way, if you produce 5 different tracks in 5 different genres, yes, of course, your skills are going to be improving as a producer. But if you produce 5 tracks in one genre, laser focused on the record label you'd like to be releasing on, that is the fastest way to get your music up to scratch and have it match perfectly for that label so they can't wait to say yes and start releasing your records. Okay, and number 2, this is something that we are all guilty of. I say guilty, but it's a good thing, right? Number 2 is actually trying to be too original. Now, I see my students get caught up in this all the time. I've been caught up in it as well. We think that we have to be super original because no one likes to admit that they're copying, right? But the truth of the matter is your favorite artists all stand on the shoulders of giants. They all reference other producers' music, and there have been producers before them, and before those people, there were producers before then, all the way back to primordial soup. So don't get hung up on being too original. There's another reason for this as well, and that's because record labels don't want to release music that's completely original. They've already got a particular audience, and that audience knows what it wants when it comes to that record label. So the sweet spot I've found is producing music that's about 90% similar to other artists on the label, and then adding that last 5 or 10% of freshness to help you stand out from the competition without alienating yourself from the audience and, by extension, the record label, by creating some crazy out there stuff before you've got the audience and the name to try something a bit crazy if you want. Now when I started producing, I wanted to be completely original, and this was a huge mistake. If only I had just decided that I wanted to produce good music instead of original music, my career would have taken off about 10 years sooner than it did. Okay, number 3, and this is kind of a life lesson for just life. It's being too interested in what you want. Personally, I get hundreds of emails every day, many of which say something like, check out my track bro, give me some feedback, want to collab? I'm not even famous and I get that many emails. Just imagine what these big labels are getting every single day. So if you're focused on what you want rather than on how you can help the record label and what they want, then you're approaching it from the wrong angle. Now, as I said, we are all guilty of this. Of course, we all have our goals, we all want to get our music released, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do. But if we can have some empathy and try and put ourselves in their position, it's going to make our job of giving them what they want much easier. And again, this ties back to both number 1 and 2. A record label wants to develop relationships with artists for a longer period of time because it costs money and time to promote artists. So you don't want to be just a one-hit wonder, which is why having 3 or 4 really good tracks produced ready for when you do approach a label is a great way to help you stand above the competition, and also be respectful of their time and try and provide value first. For example, you might have some skills from whatever other work you do in life. You might be able to offer to help them in some way with something completely unrelated to build that relationship. And you have to be a bit creative here. Use what skills you have to the best of your ability. Play your cards as well as you can. Rather than just bombarding someone who gets hundreds of emails every day, listen to my music, give me feedback, because ultimately there are hundreds of other people doing exactly that. So you need to stand out and put them first and see what you can do to help them. Okay, mistake number 4 that I see producers making all the time is one of 2 things. They either don't seek feedback or they seek feedback in the wrong places. Now, it can bruise your ego if you get negative feedback from someone, which is why it has to be from a source that you trust. But if you don't ask for feedback, there are certain things that your ears might miss unless you're very, very proficient at producing and you've been doing it for a long time. I've been producing for over 25 years and I still ask a few trusted people for feedback on my music before I submit it or release it, because I know sometimes a fresh pair of ears is all that's needed to pick up a couple of mistakes here and there. Now, the second part of this is making sure that you get feedback from the right places. If you ask your mum for feedback, she's going to tell you she likes your music, because she's your mum. If you're producing a house track and your best mate likes rock music and you ask him if it's a good track, he might say, no, I don't like it. But it might be a really good house track, he just doesn't like house music. So you have to ask the right people for the right feedback and then learn how to take that feedback and implement it into your music without letting your ego flare up and getting defensive. We offer feedback to our students each and every week in the Music Production Accelerator, and we're professional music producers, so we're the right people to ask, so we know what we're talking about when we give feedback. Now, you can find other places on the internet where you can get really good feedback. A place to check out would be Submit Hub. Perhaps join a couple of Facebook groups with other producers there and offer to set up some kind of feedback exchange, or reach out to producers that you really respect and try and develop some kind of relationship before you start asking for them to give feedback on your track. But many of them will, because they want to help you, and we producers just love to share the knowledge we've picked up over the years. It's kind of like a flex for us, right? That takes me on to mistake number 5, which is probably the biggest mistake I see producers making, and that is giving up. Giving up in the 11th hour, when you're so close, perhaps you hit that plateau, your track doesn't sound as good as you want it to in your head, and instead of seeking feedback and implementing that feedback, you give up, you close the door, and then 6 months later, you start feeling bad, you've given up music production, so you give it another go, and lo and behold, the same thing happens. Now, there's a couple of things you can help to do with this not giving up. The first is to have a very strong reason for wanting to produce. I call this your fire goal, the one that gives you fire in your belly. Maybe you want to travel the world DJing. Perhaps you want to support David Guetta in a live gig. Whatever it is that gets your fire going and makes you want to go and produce, write it down, keep it close to hand, and you can check it off. And I've got post-it notes on my monitor right here, and that's what I refer to that keeps me going when times get hard. The other thing is to join a community where there is accountability. Maybe there's weekly feedback, weekly homework, which incidentally is what we offer in the Music Production Accelerator. You might be more disciplined than me and you might not need that community, but by having deadlines and a schedule and sticking to them and getting feedback regularly, that can really help pull you out of those moments of despondency when you just want to pack it all in because it doesn't sound as good as you want it to. So I hope you found this useful, guys. If you want to learn how to get signed to any record label, make sure to check out this video here and leave a comment below this video. Which of these points can you most relate to? Which of these have you done? I know for me, it's been all 5 of them many, many times. And as I said at the beginning, the key is just being aware of when we fall into these traps, so then we can decide whether or not to continue making these mistakes or see them and go, okay, I won't do that. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for music production tutorials each and every week. And until next time, thanks for watching, cheers, and happy producing.